Battles sells itself as an auto-battler, but realistically it plays a lot more like a card game, or maybe a deck builder where you have to play in a roguelike style, though you'll be competing against other players, build out your backpack, gather items for synergies, and put it all together to hopefully claim victory. So in this beginner's guide to backpack battles, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know to get started in the game. Now, if you want something more advanced, don't worry, that video is coming soon. Be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and look forward to me talking about item synergies, ranked builds, and much, much more. But for now, let's get into it. So when you first launch the game, you'll begin here. Your rank won't be diamond, it'll be bronze, and you can choose between the Ranger and the Reaper. These are the only two classes available as of right now in the demo, though 2 more classes have been promised and will come in the future. The wardrobe allows you to use your trophies, things you win by playing, to purchase cosmetics. These cosmetics can be changed at any time, and there's even a chibi mode. Though if you don't like the chibis, don't worry, you can disable them in the menu right here. Now, both classes have a starting backpack. For the Ranger, you begin with a wooden sword, a lucky clover, and a banana. You'll also have a leather bag, which is 4 slots, and the Ranger's bag, which adds 6 slots, and items inside gain 5% critical hit chance for each of the luck stat that you have. Your lucky clover gives you 1, so all of your items start with plus 5% crit chance and plus 5% accuracy completely by default. On the other hand, the Reaper begins with a storage coffin that adds 8 slots, but item activations inside have a 25% chance to inflict poison. Poison deals damage every 2 seconds. You begin with a fly agaric mushroom that stacks poison on enemies. Yes, it is a food type, though not the sort you want to actually eat. And a dagger that you can use to stab your opponent and deal damage, or I guess your character automatically uses to stab your opponent and deal damage. Daggers have a fairly slow activation time for a weapon, but they cost no stamina and have very high accuracy. When it comes to weapons, here's the things you need to pay attention to. Number 1, the damage rating. This is how hard it hits. Number 2, the stamina cost. If you run out of stamina, the weapon won't activate. And trust me, I've had way too many runs cut short because I ran out of stamina. Your stamina does regenerate over time, but if you use more than you generate, that's a problem. Then, accuracy. Too low and you start missing. When you miss, you don't do damage. Then cooldown, how often the weapon activates. Also, daggers have a special bonus. On stun, they trigger an extra attack. There's going to be a lot of these special bonuses and synergies, so pay attention. Now, to begin playing, you can either choose a new ranked game or a new unranked game. If you're very new to the genre, and you haven't played anything like this before, I suggest starting out with a couple of unranked games just to get an idea of how it works. Now, once jumping into a game, you're presented with the shop screen, with the cute little shopkeeper here. If you don't want an item, you can feed it to the mimic, where you'll get a certain amount of gold back. In general, this gold is half rounded up whatever you paid for it. So if I bought the garlic for 2, I could then sell it for 1. The lucky clover costs 2, and I'd get 1 back. The wooden sword, you'll see, costs 3, but I get 2 back. You can buy things like a leather bag. You can buy something like a wooden sword. But oh wait, it doesn't quite fit here. Or at least not where I want it to be. I want it to be right across here. Well, just press your R key and you can rotate it. You also might not like what the shopkeeper is currently offering you. Let's say I buy the garlic here and I decide, all right, I don't like anything else here. You can pull the lever, pull the tassel, reroll, and get a whole series of new options. Now, the way items work is really interesting. They inherit bonuses from the bag. So because my wooden swords are in the Ranger's bag, they both get the crit. And they sometimes have adjacency bonuses. Food items, for example, trigger 10% faster for each food item that's adjacent, not counting duplicates, so I couldn't line up 2 bananas. In this case, the garlic is giving a bonus to the banana, and the banana is giving a bonus to the garlic. And you'll be able to see the little blue star outline for where a shape could trigger, and a gold star means it's going to trigger. This appears when you mouse over an item. So let's go into our first backpack battle here. It'll look for an opponent for a short time, and then load into the game. Up here you can control the speed of a battle, going from really fast to completely paused. And if you pause, you can take a look at your items and see what they're doing. Either by mousing over, so that I know, all right, I'm doing 1.4 DPS with my sword and using 0.7 stamina per second, My opponent is doing the same. Or you can open the log, which shows everything in combat, and I can see, all right, 50% DPS. I've got basically double their damage output, slightly better than double actually. And so that's how you look at all the basics. You let it play out, and here you go, round 1, or if you're a little bit less lucky, maybe you have a worse build, round lost. When all 5 tries or 5 losses are accumulated, you lose and you'll have to start again. In a ranked match, this is where you might lose rating. But you might also gain rating depending on your wins. So in this case, I have 1 trophy or 1 win out of 10. After winning a round, you come back here, the shop will have refreshed, and you have all sorts of new options. If you're ever unsure of what an item could be useful for, just mouse over it. See that little blue line? Well, there's a line from a piggy bank to the clover. This means the item can in some way combine. Same with the whetstone to my wooden swords. So if I put this, let's just say here, now not only will both of my wooden swords get a damage bonus, but I've got a potential combination. Let's try refreshing the shop again, see if we get anything else interesting. All right, discount garlic. Everyone loves discount garlic. And I don't know, maybe a blueberry for some faster garlic triggers. Let's try this and see how it does in another battle. We're going to speed this one up to go quickly through. So slightly different build. My opponent is using a pan, which I'll show off here. Pan gains damage for every adjacent food. Right now they have 2 adjacent food, the banana and the garlic. Really, they should have put the carrot in as well. That would have increased their DPS. But they lost to the mighty double sword and garlic combo. If the battle goes on for too long, you will become fatigued where you take continual damage. So keep an eye out for that. I'll buy a little bit more space to expand my backpack, reroll, and buy some stuff to put in it. Notice again that little blue line popped up showing there's synergy between the wooden buckler and the walrus tusk. Now here's where things get interesting. I bought another whetstone, and this now says 2 out of 2 hero sword. You can see this with the little gold line connecting things. Though when it comes to item combination, 2 things that are slight words of caution. Number 1, make sure when you're placing 2 items like this that they actually combine with what you want it to. So right here, both gold lines have to go to the wooden sword for it to become a hero sword. Also, maybe I don't want this wooden sword to become a hero sword. If I right-click the item, it will be locked and won't combine with anything. But for now, I do actually want it to become a hero sword, so I'm gonna just leave it and maybe buy something, then enter the next battle. I won just by the skin of my teeth there. Don't worry, that'll happen a lot. You'll see that the enemy's poison debuff ramped a significant amount of damage on me. And there we go. The item has combined. The shops also offered me a fanny pack, a smaller backpack that has a bonus. Items inside it trigger faster. So if I put this here, I'll want to put, let's just say, the 2 weapons inside. Now they both trigger faster. The hero sword is also interesting because it gives damage to nearby weapons. This wooden sword now has +2 damage. Essentially, the properties of the 2 whetstones were incorporated into the item. And you know what? It's time for a change. I'm going to grab a different weapon, get rid of my wooden sword. As a note, I'm not necessarily making the most optimal build choices here. I'm kind of just demonstrating concepts. So don't try to copy this thinking, oh, it's a perfect build and what you should do every time. Use it as a really rough guideline of some of the gameplay mechanics and how they work. And yes, positioning does matter a lot. Because right here, the blueberry is giving bonuses to and receiving bonuses from 3 different food types. The spear itself is also interesting. For every space that's open, it destroys enemy armor. Armor is a defensive buff that can make it quite difficult to kill a foe. There are some builds that stack so much armor, they can be virtually unkillable, and a spear will melt through that armor in no time. Another character, or item, or slime creature that you should watch out for is Goobert. Goobert's great. He has a massive source of healing, assuming you put items adjacent, and plenty of recipes. There's Steel Goobert that gives armor and weapon damage, Light Goobert that blinds enemies and heals a little bit more, Blood Goobert that gives you vampirism, think lifesteal, and of course the brand new Carrot Goobert that gives you Empower, increasing your weapon damage. And if you're really, really lucky and make all 4 Gooberts in the same run, then you'll get the Rainbow Goobert, This is fairly new though, so I don't have it yet. A similar thing can be done with a hero sword. It has 2 upgrade paths. If you combine it with another 2 whetstones, it becomes the hero longsword, giving +4 melee damage to everything adjacent. Alternatively, it could be the falcon blade when combined with dual gloves of haste, causing all items to trigger 35% faster, and it attacks twice, which is really powerful. But you know what's more powerful than a falcon blade or the hero longsword? The crossblades, a combination of both of them, and an incredibly powerful godly melee weapon. Now, you'll notice the godly tag here and there. Essentially, it means the item is super rare, powerful, difficult to make, but also really, really good. In this case, the crossblades causes something to trigger 60% faster, on hit it gains damage and triggers faster, and the other supported weapon gets +10 to its damage roll. Now, when you reach round 8, you'll be able to choose a subclass. You do this by purchasing a special unique item. For the ranger, there's 3 subclasses. Hunter, denoted by the piercing arrow, for builds that specialize in crit. Lifebinder, denoted by the Idrisil leaf, for builds that specialize in mana. And Pathfinder, denoted by the poison ivy leaf, for builds that specialize in spikes, which is a thorn-style reflect. Also poison, because why not poison your enemies when you're pricking them to death? So in this case, I don't really have a set build going yet, and I could essentially pick any of these and hope I get matching items. Ideally, you'll already have a couple of set pieces early on that help guide your path. Like, oh, I already have some good crit stuff, so I'll go Piercing Arrow. Or, oh, I already have a lot of things that use mana, so I'll go with a Life Binder. But for now, because I don't, I'm just going to choose randomly to continue the demonstration. Sometimes you'll encounter items in the shop which are on sale, like this Holy Armor. This Holy Armor costs 7 instead of a normal 14. Remember how I said earlier, if you sell something to the shop, you get back half as much? That essentially means if you're not sure you're going to use it, but you aren't going to use the gold for anything else that turn, you might as well buy it and hold on to it. It's effectively free because you can always sell it back for 7 later. And if there's an item that you think, oh, I might want this fanny pack, but I don't have enough gold, well, just right-click it and it'll be reserved. Now, when the shop refreshes, you're able to still purchase the item. This also causes the item to persist through multiple rounds. Just keep in mind that it also means another item, which could be on sale, won't roll, so it can be a double-edged sword and shouldn't be abused. Now, the Reaper's options for subclass are the Vampiress with Nocturnal Locklifter, something that synergizes very well with Lifesteal, and allows your poison to be life stolen as well, thus giving you a lot of healing. Hexblade, which is great when you want to stack debuffs on enemies and give your items that are stacking those debuffs extra crit chance. Or Mr. Struggles, who you need to take all the way to the end, because he really goes into overdrive when fatigue kicks in. As it says on the item, at nightfall, both characters take increasing fatigue damage every second. Not only do your items trigger faster during nightfall, but he will inflict fatigue as well, meaning this is very good for niche builds. But if you want something more general, quite often you'll be taking the other 2 instead. At least that's just my experience. Alright, so let's talk for a second here, before my character meets their imminent demise, about buffs and debuffs, because there are a lot of different buffs, debuffs, and special effects. You can see all of your buffs here. For example, Life Regeneration heals you. The debuff Poison does exactly the opposite and deals damage. Mana is a resource used by magic items, such as the Spectral Dagger, which consumes mana to attack enemy health directly, ignoring their armor, and also dealing increased damage. Vampirism heals you when you hit enemies with a melee weapon. Note, Vampirism doesn't apply to certain effects that are ranged weapons or, well, anything that's not a melee weapon. The Ruby Whelp's an example. These don't benefit from Vampirism. They do, however, provide Heat, which causes all items to trigger faster. The opposite is Cold, which causes items to trigger slower. Luck increases accuracy, Blind reduces accuracy. And Spikes, again, when a melee weapon hits, deals reflect damage. Again, you can always open the combat log and see what's doing what. Also, since it's relevant, this is a potion. Potions trigger an effect once when the trigger condition is met. If your health drops below 50%, the health potion triggers. If you link a potion to another potion, such as to the Demonic Flask, it also applies that effect. Therefore, when my health potion triggers, it applies the Demonic Flask effect dealing damage to the enemy based on their debuffs, though in this case it clearly wasn't enough. Now after you win 10 rounds, you'll be presented with an option. You can either take the win, which when you're playing ranked will give you a fixed amount of LP, or you can enter survival mode, where you're going to need to survive for a fixed number of rounds. You will gain 1 life, but the LP you gain will be either greatly reduced or greatly increased depending on how many rounds you make it. So in this case, I could either take the win and call it good and move on to the next build, or enter survival mode and go till round 18, 7 more, where I would have 5 lives to do it, meaning I would get significantly reduced LP if I lost 5 times and failed to survive. I'd probably get around the same LP if I won 3 times and lost 4, and I'd get significantly more if I won all 7. Now one last really important topic, health scaling. As you level up, you gain health. This means early on in the game, you're far more vulnerable to getting bursted down than you are later. It takes a truly impressive amount of damage to burst through 300 health in a couple seconds, but all it takes is a couple lucky crits to burst through 35 in the same time. So in the early game, don't rely on mechanisms of chance to keep you alive. Go for things that are more consistent, and accept that occasionally someone's going to go for the mechanisms of chance and just happen to blow you up. But in the late game, you want to build with a lot of synergies. When your items synergize together, the whole is certainly a lot greater than the sum of its parts, both in terms of damage and defenses. So now, just a couple quick tips and tricks. First up, I've always found that double weapon is the most effective way to start, at least the most reliable and consistent. Sometimes, yes, a single weapon with a bunch of supporting items can be remarkably effective, especially on Reaper where you get to take advantage of poison. Heal yourself up with enough garlic, and your opponent will eventually melt under the collective weight of poison and fatigue. But I found that to be more risky, and I'd rather just go with double weapon, as much of the time it does end up working out. Though the game's regularly getting patches, so this might not be true by the time you're watching this video. In the early game, your resources are really limited. You're not going to be able to reroll too much, and every purchase you make should matter. Look out for items that are on sale, because those are especially potent. Meanwhile, as you get into the mid-game, you really want a strategy with a lot of synergies. You don't want to grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of something else. That's not going to go well for you, as you'll run out of scaling, and your opponent will then outscale you and destroy you. Also keep in mind, almost every item has an opportunity cost. Something else could be in your backpack. Furthermore, because of how defenses work, even something as simple as picking up a dagger as a melee weapon can introduce liabilities into your build. If it's not contributing to your damage in any meaningful way, all it means is you're more likely to lose to spikes, or more likely to lose your stamina to enemy shield builds. And speaking of, build your defenses to counter a variety of enemy setups. Shields and spikes counter melee builds. Ripsaw Blades, a weapon, counters thorns and is pretty effective against vampirism due to stripping regen. Glens, such as from the carrot, counters debuffs like poison. So not every defense looks like a defensive item at first glance. And you also want to understand your damage mechanics. The Spectral Dagger, for example, or anything socketed with a Sapphire, gives you a chance to attack enemy health directly, bypassing their armor. And debuff builds usually take a long time to ramp up, so you want some extra defenses, but they do better the longer a fight goes on. Meanwhile, burst damage builds like the Lightsaber or Greatsword often front-load their damage, but risk running out of steam, so you might not need to build for the long game there, because if you hit the long game, you're probably already going to lose. Just go for the early game and make it as strong as possible. And last up, when it comes to ranked, remember there is a person on the other side of a screen, and you're going to hit a wall eventually, but don't give up. When you reach a point where you don't think you're improving, and you think you're losing over and over and over again, well, then you have a few options. Number 1 would be try a different class. Number 2 is do a little research into the meta. Maybe one of the classes is just way stronger or way weaker than the others. And if you know that, sure, some people are going to enjoy the uphill battle, but other people might want the easy coasting of playing the overpowered class. Already within the demo, we've seen several balance changes, bringing things more in line, so it probably won't be imbalanced for that long. But players are also very clever at finding OP combinations, so it's entirely possible someone will find something else that's broken. And it could just be that you need a different perspective, in which case you should go and look up some other builds that different people are running. Maybe you'll find out that there's a really reliable Goobert strategy that absolutely crushes in the mid-game. Or maybe you find out that you've been running 4 daggers with your hammer setup, and actually 3 is the optimal number, whereas the 4th just becomes a liability. Don't be afraid to browse some streams on Twitch, follow videos, and learn from other players. Or if there's any tips and tricks that you think are really clever, be sure to put them down below, and maybe check the comments for tips and tricks left by other viewers. Now if you're looking for something else to watch, be sure to get subscribed, as I'm going to be talking about backpack battles again in the future. Or if you want something that you can watch right now, check down below. Maybe there's going to be a backpack battles video waiting for you. And if not, I'll leave my thoughts on Loop Hero, another game that ended up playing somewhat similarly, where you want to combine your items with a little bit more of a card game feel. That'll be up in the card and down below. With that said, thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you don't make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is also down below. I have to say, I'm really glad that I found this game. When it was first described to me as an auto battler, I thought, oh, I'm not going to like that. Because I don't generally like games that are super automated. Backpack Battles feels much more like an inventory Tetris manager, and that leads to a lot of really fun min-maxing. So I'm very glad that I stopped by Ziggy D's stream, saw some gameplay for myself, and ended up checking it out. With that said, thanks for watching, hope you learned something, and I'll see you again sometime soon.